As I contemplated why I chose to study wildlife management, I came up with a couple of good reasons, all centering around what Leopold described as the changing role of Homo sapiens from conqueror of the land to plain member and citizen of it. That begged the larger question, why does anyone care about wildlife, and therefore wildlife management? In researching an answer to this question, I came upon a book, Who Cares About Wildlife, by Michael Manfredo. In his book, Manfredo provides an overview of the socio-psychological theories used in studying the human dimensions of wildlife management and how the research guided by these theories can inform conservation practices. With his writing, along with Leopold's and forgotten others, I wove together a few reasons why I, and anybody, study wildlife management. Who cares about wildlife? People worldwide have different reasons for caring about wildlife. Wildlife is a source of attraction and fear. Wildlife has a utilitarian value and symbolic meaning. Wildlife has religious and spiritual significance. And wildlife is an indicator of people's concern for environmental sustainability. Manfredo talks about 4 key areas of concern: recreation and tourism activities, the wildlife-human conflict, wildlife diseases, and a concern for environmental sustainability. We will look at each of these individually. Tourism. Tourism is the largest sector in the world economy, generating $3.6 trillion in economic activity and 8% of jobs annually worldwide. Tourism is particularly important as an employer in poor regions of the world, and is the primary export for 83% of developing countries. Ecotourism has enjoyed significant growth relative to the rest of the tourism industry. In the 90s, ecotourism grew at a rate of 20 to 34% per year, and it continues to outpace the rest of the industry. Wildlife-associated recreation generates a significant amount of economic activity. The U.S. Department of the Interior announced a new report by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service that shows that 101.6 million Americans, 40% of the U.S. population 16 years and older, participated in wildlife-related activities in 2016. The survey illustrates gains in wildlife watching, particularly around the home, and fishing, with moderate declines in the number of hunters nationally. The findings reflect a continued interest in engaging in the outdoors. These activities are drivers behind an economic powerhouse where participants spend $156 billion, the most in the last 25 years. Worldwide whale watching is a $1 billion industry operating in 492 communities in 87 countries and territories. Human-wildlife conflict. It is estimated that human-wildlife conflict causes $22.3 billion in losses per year in the United States, with the largest expense, $8.3 billion, being incurred in urban areas due to mice, squirrels, raccoons, moles, pigeons, starlings, and skunks. Agricultural loss is estimated at $4.5 billion per year, while annual loss due to deer auto collisions is estimated at $1.6 billion. In addition to economic and property loss, wildlife can threaten human safety. It has been shown that attacks by alligators, cougars, bears, coyotes, bison, and moose are on the increase in the United States. The primary reason behind this increase in human-wildlife conflict is expanding human settlement. Humans occupy more and more places, destroying or fragmenting habitat. In addition to coincidental human-wildlife conflicts brought on by shared habitat, some conflict occurs because of direct action by humans. U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service data shows that 55.5 million Americans engage in wildlife feeding activities. Feeding wildlife can in turn lead to habituation, and animals may identify humans as a food source rather than a threat. Scientists contend that the most important diseases of modern human populations have animal origins. These diseases emerged in the past 11,000 years following the rise of agriculture. Citing research from the University of Edinburgh, of the 1,709 known pathogens that plague humans, 832 are zoonotic. Of the 156 of these considered emerging, 114 are zoonotic. On the list of high-priority agents of concern for bioterrorism activities from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, nearly 80% are zoonotic. There is also evidence that suggests that human immunodeficiency virus, HIV, may have been transmitted to human populations from chimpanzees. And finally, environmental sustainability. In the early 20th century, North American wildlife was protected for utilitarian reasons. At that time, game scarcity, extirpation, and extinction were part of a growing list of concerns over the resiliency of wildlife populations. During the latter third of the 20th century, utilitarian interests and single-species game management focus of wildlife management began giving way to broader concerns for ecological integrity, biodiversity preservation, and environmental quality. As Leopold surmised, even the uneconomically important creatures that are members of the biotic community, and if the biotic community's stability depends on its integrity, they too are entitled to continuance. Leopold led us through the evolution of the land ethic, and Manfredo showed us that those same milestones exist and shape our motives today. Tourism is still exploiting the land, but the need for conservation to sustain that tourism is obvious. Human-wildlife conflict and wildlife diseases are important to humankind, not because we care about the well-being of other animals, but because of the harm they can bring upon us. And just as Leopold showed us a more enlightened land ethic as time progressed, we end here with a concern for environmental sustainability because the stability of the biotic community of which we are a member depends upon its stability.